Hello, this is Mr. Red Fox speaking, and this is a little video where I'm going to be reading an article from Metro Entertainment, UK. I don't know who the author of this article is, but let's get to it. The premise of the article is this. Twilight Princess is the best Legend of Zelda game, and Breath of the Wild is the worst. Reader's feature. Ooh boy, them's fighting words. Okay, a reader explains his love for for Zelda, Twilight Princess, and why he's not looking forward to the sequel to Breath of the Wild. If every video game franchise in the world disappeared tomorrow except for The Legend of Zelda, I would be perfectly satisfied. That's not an indication of my apathy for other games, but my love for Nintendo's classic action-adventure. Ever since playing A Link to the Past on my SNES back in Christmas 1993, I've been entranced by the series' elegant simplicity and deceptively deep gameplay. No other franchise has so many perfect games, and that's not my hyperbole. That's just looking at their critic scores. I don't use this to justify my opinions, though, as there are two major areas where I disagree with the consensus. And that is when it comes to Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. I'll say it straight up. I not only don't like Breath of the Wild, I completely refuse to accept it as a Zelda game. Even with a different name, I would think it's boring, much too spread out, and I hate the breakable weapons. As a Zelda game, it's even worse. There's no proper puzzles, no proper story, and the bosses are terrible. Everything that would be best in the business for a Zelda game is the worst it's ever been in Breath of the Wild, and no one even argues otherwise. I'm all for doing something different, but when that results in unrecognizable as the thing it's supposed to be, what's the point? I assume that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be largely similar, at least in terms of all the things I don't like, and I'm resigned to that. I am reasonably confident that Nintendo will create another game, though, that doesn't follow that formula. In fact, if it weren't for the pandemic, I imagine they probably would have announced a small-scale spin-off or remake by now, but obviously they haven't. A Switch release for the Wind Waker and the Twilight Princess also seems inevitable at some point, which brings me to my other disagreement with the critics. Twilight Princess is awesome. It gets criticized for being too similar to Ocarina of Time, but that right there is something I've never understood. How many sequels do we have in other franchises, some coming out one year after another, where being exactly the same as one another is never seen as a negative? And yet, apparently Zelda, which has so many very different sequels and spin-offs, isn't allowed one. It's not as if it really is that similar to Ocarina of Time anyway. It just follows the same formula, and that's why I love it, because it's the style of Zelda I prefer, but done to perfection. Twilight Princess has the best dungeons, the best puzzles, the best combat, and the best story of any Zelda, and I honestly don't see how anyone could disagree with that. Sure, the characters are a bit ugly, a bit weird and ugly, and the soundtrack isn't the most memorable, but those are honestly the only negatives I can think of. I love Minda. She's absolutely the best character in the whole series, and that isn't one of the big three. And the wolf transformations are great. The whole design is the perfect mix of open world and old school design, and the Twilight Realm looks amazing. Everything a Zelda game needs to do, it did as good or better than any other, and I'll never get tired of replaying it. Breath of the Wild, though, I got tired of after 5 hours. I know I'm not going to change anyone's mind about it, but I just wanted to stick up for Twilight Princess before the hype of Breath of the Wild 2 convinces more people that its predecessor is a real Zelda game. Okay, I will give my thoughts on this article after the cut. Alright, here we go. This is Mr. Red Fox, and it's time for me to explain that article I just went through. Basically, I agree almost 95% of what that author said. I think that Breath of the Wild, like, as far as a game, it's fine. As far as being part of the Legend of Zelda series, it really doesn't feel like it belongs in the same universe. Gone are the intricate dungeons. Gone are the awesome little weapons you found in the dungeon or items that you could use to solve puzzles in other areas of the world and in other dungeons. Instead, we're left with breakable weapons that kind of are one-off. The combat is insipid. It's a lot of if-then statements. I know some people say, well, combat is difficult. The difficulty of combat in Breath of the Wild isn't in, like, smart enemy AI. It's in basically two things. First of all, figuring out an enemy's tell so that you know how to perfectly block. And then once you get that down, it's figuring out how to use what's it called? It's basically how they if you play the game on heroic difficulty or whatever, legendary, whatever, the highest level of difficulty that you can play in Breath of the Wild, enemies just get more health, and your weapons, I believe, become even less durable than they are in the base game. So, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of features that should be in that game that aren't there. So, my unpopular opinion is that I actually agree with that Breath of the Wild is not a very good Legend of Zelda, and in fact, I would say Twilight Princess may be one of the best Legend of Zeldas ever made, and I'll explain why. Twilight Princess does something that the other Legend of Zelda games just kind of fail at. Well, not really. Twilight Princess doesn't really do anything new. Doesn't add anything new to the Zelda series. But what it does do, it perfects what already exists. You know? Which I think is a damn sight more impressive than trying to do something new and sucking at it. I would say that Twilight Princess, in my estimation, is essentially a perfected version of Breath of the Wild. It's a perfected version of Ocarina of Time. Instead of having an ineffectual kid version of Link to play through the first 20-30% of the game, you have Wolf Link, who is way more useful than Kid Link ever was. Alright? Instead of having weapons in the game that once you upgrade to a certain point, you're never going back to the wooden shield once you have the Hylian shield or the mirror shield. There's no reason to downgrade. Whereas every single weapon in Twilight Princess has its uses. When it's a better time to use this than that. So yeah, do you agree, disagree? Tell me how your opinions on that particular how you feel about that. That's the end of this video. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. I have a link to the article in the description of this video, so let me know what's going on. The times for the channel will be for the channel's casts will be changing. For the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be basically doing a lot of business stuff. My schedule is going to change yet again. So I'll let you guys know what's going on. We'll see what we shall see. But yeah. Basically, I'll be able to do a Saturday cast next week. Not this upcoming weekend, but next week and the week after that. And I should be able to do a Saturday and Wednesday cast the week of August 21st. So look forward to that. We will, August 21st, August 22nd we'll have a Wednesday cast the 24th and a Saturday cast, knock on wood, the 27th. So with that being said, that's the end of the video. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. Peace, and have a good day.